Yo, what is up, boys and girls? Welcome back to MiRecap, where we recap what happened last week and we try to do, a power ranking tier list of what happened last week based on what happened last week in week 4. So yeah, without further ado, let's start with the first team. All right, we're going to be starting things off with Geek Fam. So, Geek Fam, it's kind of weird. They're in a position where they can be the best and they can also be the most average team, really depending on the day, right? Last week, we saw them beat Fnatic Onic and it was, I forgot, but Fnatic Onic and Bigetron, my bad. They were able to beat Fnatic Onic and Bigetron last week in week 3, and then in week 4, all of a sudden, they started taking L's and L's and L's. They were able to, they weren't able to actually beat Liquid. They got beaten up by Liquid ID 2-1, and then they got beaten up by RRQ, and that marks the end of the whole Kingslayer era, where Geek has never lost to RRQ since Season 11, since the entrance of Beloy and Aboy. They have never lost to RRQ. Well, this week they actually lost. So let's talk about some of the issues. And I think this is one of the issues for sure. The drafts are a bit too forced, right? Like in some of these matches, yes, we get it, Beloy. You can play the Gatot Kacha. And it's a great pick in game 1 against Team Liquid ID. But the fact that he keeps on showing it makes it easier to read. Gives the opponents even, more time to actually think about the Gatot, how it works, and then maneuver away from it or maneuver around it, right? A lot of these fights against Team Liquid as well, you can see that they have gone the read just after one game. The second game, it was a bit more iffy. Actually, not just one game. I think 1.5 games it took Liquid to adjust to the Gatot Kacha. So next one is Masako's performance that has been quite on and off. And this is maybe a good point to actually bring up for Geek Fam. This is the reason that they utilized Chidera over Marky as well in the previous season. And for the most part, always, Chidera over Marky. And maybe we'll see Chidera over Masako even. Masako is so on and off. And it was the same for Marky, right? When he's good, he's really good. He can help Geek Fam reverse sweep RRQ in the playoffs. But when he's not performing well, he just plays way too passive. And that was Marky. Now with Masako, it's the opposite. He's either carrying the team or he's a bit too aggressive. Leaves himself open to ganks. I remember against Team Liquid ID, without Flicker, he still wanted to walk up forward in lane, go up against Aaron Shiki. And yeah, there's a lot of, amateurish mistakes from Masako that I think can be fixed. This is not a big issue just yet. If in the upcoming weeks he still hasn't improved, then it's going to be a big problem. But next, Gobs over Veldora. I've already been talking about this, and I really dislike it when teams actually, deploy their players in pairs. So Geek Fam, the way that they've been playing is they either go Gobs Chidera or Veldora Masako. Again, I think they should try Gobs Masako because of Masako's very aggressive style with Gobs enabling style. I think that could actually work really well. Because the thing is, Gobs is a playmaker. He's more of a Luke than Veldora when it comes to, filling the hole that Luke left when Luke joined Bigetron Alpha and left Geek Fam. Gobs plays the Arlet, he plays the Edith, he plays the playmakers, and he's more of an enabler, as you can see from his performances as well. Veldora, I would say, usually I would categorize him as the carry type of XP laner. He wants to carry the game, but now he's actually not been playing a lot of the carries, right? Because for the most part, the carry XPs haven't been working out anyways. Veldora, he's more of a distraction now. He's not a carry. He's more of a distraction, right? Like the Thamus picks and stuff like that can really just make the team think about him. But in the end, they'll still be able to perform well. They'll still be able to, he basically distracts the opposing team so that the rest of the team plays well. Also, in addition to Geek Fam, that I forgot to put in the video, Vincent is still a problem for Geek Fam. I don't mean to, continue to just put on pressure on Vincent, but I've been saying this all the way from week 1. This man plays Roger and Julian, and that's it. And even, sure, the Roger Julians are great, but you can see that whenever he doesn't get the Roger, whenever he doesn't get the Julian, or technically whenever he doesn't get the Roger, he becomes a very average player. Even on the Julian, he isn't really like a godly special player because they also lost against Liquid on the Julian. So now every team knows that you need to ban the Roger against Geek Fam, and that's why they've been able to get such a massive advantage. Vincent becomes a non-factor in 90% of their games now because Roger is banned out, because Julian is banned out, because he's forced to play the Nolans, forced to play these assassins like the Ling. And against RRQ were fucking happy to give the Ling away. It's almost like I said it last week. I'll say it again. Hey, Roger ban for Geek Fam equals to Vincent struggle. Okay, and I think you've seen that. So yeah. So it does seem like we find ourselves in a tough spot. I will have to say the Geek Fam, even though, yes, in the standings, they've dropped all the way to no playoffs even. They've dropped all the way to 7th place. I am not too sure if we can judge that one or the 2 matches and say that Geek Fam are no playoff just yet. I think they are still top tier. Honestly, I still think they are still top tier. They can just adjust some of these mistakes. It's not massive mistakes. They can still come back from it. So I'll put them just here. I'll downgrade them a bit, you know, right below in top tier. And I guess, yeah, we'll move to the next team. All right, next up, we have EVOS Glory. And man, I don't know where to start. So it looked really promising last week with a match win and a game win. Match win, that was their first match win in Season 14, and the game win against Bigetron Alpha. It looked like, you know, they've kind of fixed a lot of their errors. They fixed the gold lane problem where Brands has just not been performing anywhere in the map. Team fights, no. Laning, no. Nothing, right? So Natco coming in, at least they have someone who can actually win out of the team fights. And we also saw against Bigetron Alpha them utilize a strong side gold, which is something we don't really see too often in MPL ID. For the most part, we do see the gold lane really just play weak side, you know, get Moskov, get Roger even, and they're in the sidelines just farming and trying to bully their opponents, right? They're in their own island. But EVOS Glory this week, how do they go from almost beating Bigetron Alpha, winning a match, and now losing to Rebellion, the worst team in MPL Indo? Their drafts are actually not bad, and you can see it on your screen right now. They don't respect Phoveus, but that's it. In the games against Rebellion, they always win in the early game. And I have no idea how they don't get the early game and utilize it to snowball like they did in previous season. Because this team, I feel, has lost all of their confidence. They just have no confidence. They literally just rely on counter initiations, and then they rely on the enemy team to start. When they have the lead, they don't make any moves on the map to push their lead. They just farm and wait, and in the end, it actually gives the opponents ways to just farm up and wait for their own power spike, and that's how they lost against Rebellion. They win early game, they get the turtle, they fight, and they get 1,000 gold lead at the start of the game, but then they're lost. They're just like, what do we do after this? What? Nothing. They just completely forget about a lot of the things that they need to do. And also, when some mistakes happen, EVOS, they're known as, you know, mentality giants. That's the reason they were able to get 2nd place last season. I'll actually go as far as to say, as basically for EVOS, the only reason they got 2nd place was because they are mentality giants. They're mentality beasts. In the playoffs last season, Geek Fam was way better than them on paper. This team had no right getting 2nd place, but they proved everybody wrong because they were just mentally stronger than everybody in the playoffs. So it's very strange to see their mental just deteriorate here in MPL Indonesia Season 14. Natco's positioning after, like, when they lost the Lord, I don't know what the fuck Natco was doing. You can see it on your screen again. I thought last season it was bad because Natco made a lot of questionable moves last season. I thought for sure he would have improved. That's why he's back here in MPL. But it still seems that, you know, some of those mistakes are still there in him. And a lot of the decisions that he makes end up losing the team the game. So for EVOS Glory, I really hope that they improve on this part. Let's see where I put them in the standings. I really don't want to put EVOS Glory down here, but I feel like at this point we have to, right? I think they might be... I think they're still... The fact that they lost to Rebellion is just wacky, bro. But yeah, right now, if this continues, man, if they play the way they did in Week 4, I'm just going to have to put them right here. Yeah, that's it. Let's move on to the next team. Now we get to DEWA United. So, yeah. Last week, I already said that DEWA, they were really good in the first few weeks. You know, they looked good, but they're going to be exposed in Week 4. And hey, I kind of called it, I'm just going to have to say. But they have completely discarded or disregarded what made them strong in the early weeks. At least in the early weeks, the way that they looked strong was the fact that they actually have Chorizo as an enabler, Hijume as an enabler that made Ray and Mueza able to shine. And then the gold lane is more of a weak side that actually, you know, carries the game in the later stage of the game, but that's every gold laner almost in MPL Indonesia. So they could have really built on the strengths that they had early on in MPL Indonesia Season 14, but they decided to do something pretty ridiculous, pretty bombastic in my opinion. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Obviously, this is just my perspective as a caster. Yeah, they swapped out Hijume for Kaze. And now they play Ray and Mueza, and it almost seems like Ray and Mueza are just a shallow shell of their previous self. They're not playing the way they did when Hijume was around. Because, again, Kaze is more of a playmaker. Kaze is not a playmaker. Hijume is the playmaker. So, Kaze plays these heroes that want to stand in the back and deal damage. He wants to be the carry, and it was great in the utility meta. It can still work maybe here as well, just like a boy, but you need a jungler that plays more to enable you. You need a roamer that plays more to enable you. It almost seems like, again, the carries of the team in week 1, week 2, it was Ray and Mueza. So they should really play around that, man. Yeah, so no Hijume really shows how bad DEWA is without Hijume. Yeah, I guess we'll just see what happens to DEWA United, because the drafts have been on and off as well a lot of times, for DEWA. Hasn't been the best, hasn't been the worst either. So I guess we'll see how DEWA continue. But yeah, based on this, I'm not a fan right now. All right, so DEWA United, let's see. They're in no playoffs. I think it's the same. I honestly feel like maybe we could put that they're here. They're still here. I honestly feel like there are a lot of changes that they could make to make the team better. Right now, they're getting easily read out. Maybe I'll put EVOS ahead of them still. I don't know. They lost to Rebellion too, but I still feel like EVOS can find their form. Believe me, I think they can find their form. I don't know, though. It looks pretty grim. But yeah, these three are very, very close to each other. I'm not even joking. Like the bottom 3 teams with these rosters that they just deployed in week 4 and with the performance they played in week 4, they're like basically all GOATs. Like, I'm not even joking. They're all GOATs right now. But hey, we always got to have a meme for Rebellion, so I'm going to put them there. Yeah, DEWA and EVOS are literally just the same team right now, like 50-50. They both have no pillars. Actually, I'll rate DEWA better. They have Chorizo. He's still a solid member on the team. Ray is also really solid. So Mueza too. It's just now that they put Hijume back in, bro. Stop this bullshit. All right, next up we have Alter Ego. So Alter Ego, I mean... This Alter Ego is literally just plain out aggressive and mechanics. They are pure mechanics. Alter Ego is a team that relies solely on mechanics and instincts, mechanics and instincts. Because yes, it looks like they understand, how they actually, and they understand the basics of macro. They understand like an MPL team. For an MPL team, it's very low, I would still say, in terms of the macro game. But they are very, very aggressive. They are very, very highly mechanical. And mainly Nile. Gee, guys. I don't know. If you didn't watch it, you can see on your screen right now. But holy moly, Nile is a beast. He is so damn good on these flashy assassins. And notice how I said flashy, because he needs the flashy assassins. He needs the Fanny. He needs the Lancelot. He needs the Hayabusa. Alter Ego are the only team in MPL Indonesia so far, or not the only, but one of the only teams that actually don't decide to flex the Roger. Every time they pick the Roger, it is, I would say, 100% going to the gold lane. Now, because the 4 times that they did flex it to Nile, it just did not work. He just needs heroes like this where he can make plays alone. Roger is a good carry, but he needs the team to kind of like set up and enable him, right? Meanwhile, for a lot of these other assassins, not really. Aldo also, by the way. But, also, this is a very one-dimensional playstyle, guys. And top teams will be able to read this for sure. The thing is, Alter Ego, they just fight. They're just better at fighting against a lot of the other lower-tier teams. But I do want to give props to Alter Ego, though, because some of their drafts have been spectacular in this week. I remember criticizing their drafts hard in week 3, and it's still true. Their drafts were pretty bad in week 3. But week 4... it was great, up against RRQ as well. I honestly felt like game 2, game 3, you can see it on your screen right here, but yeah, they should have actually won these games. And I guess sometimes it's the draft that loses them the game, like in game 1 against RRQ, but then game 2, game 3, the players need to step up too. Like both, so the coach needs to be more consistent, the player needs to be able to execute these game plans way better too, all right? Because this was the only loss of the fucking Lolita Hanabi around the world. And it's an ID team that lost on the list. We destroyed the win rate of Lolita Hanabi. But yeah, let's see where I put Alter Ego in my list. All right, so where would I put Alter Ego? I think they deserve to come back up here, to be mid-table. I still think they're very one-dimensional with the way that they are playing. It's literally just mechanic-based. It is team fight over team fight over team fight. But yeah, hey, it shows promise still. It shows that they still have ways to beat their opponents. Yeah, they're better than the three teams below them right now. Sure, let's put them up there. And yeah, let's move to the next team. All right, next up, we got TLID. And it really seems like, for me, TLID are just an alter ego that is better. Right? They are a mechanical team as well. They rely heavily on their individual skill, from laning, from pathing, team fighting, everything, just the mechanics of the game. And everything they do in the game, it really is centered around their mechanics, just like Alter Ego. The difference is Liquid actually understand more of the macro game. They understand when to utilize their power spike. They know their power spike windows. They know when to hit those, when they are going to hit those power spikes as well. So they know when to look for these fights, when to stay disciplined and just farm up. And they do a really good job at that. They're actually just really, they have a way to slow down the pace of the game when the game isn't going their way. And then they'll be able to come back into fights that they're comfortable taking because they have knowledge of their power spike. So yeah, Liquid, very, very cool. And honestly, again, this team is probably the team with the most potential in MPL Indonesia. If they get better macro-wise, this team is going places. I'm not even joking. Like, I really hope they can capitalize on this. And again, the main mistakes for Liquid have always just been, like, even in this season, sometimes they are a bit too aggressive, right? And that is quite bad for a team that is very young. They've improved so much, though, in the last few weeks after getting promoted to MPL ID. And I'm not too sure, but Witty is a bit inconsistent. Maybe they could try to utilize Yaoi, but it does seem like with Witty, everybody just feels more confident and feels more, the synergy is just better. So maybe, hey, when you already have so many of these flashy players like Yehezkiel, Aaron Shiki, and Fabian, maybe it's great to have players like Witty and Aran that just enable the team. Because if you get Yaoi there, then there'll be maybe too many superstars in the team. Yeah, let's move to Liquid ID's position here. All right, based on their performance this week, honestly, I'm not going to move Liquid ID. I think they definitely still fit where I put them, right here. They were able to beat Geek Fam, yes, but I don't want to rate them higher than Geek Fam just yet. And this week, they'll definitely have, matches that can actually prove that they are better. They're actually going to be up against Alter Ego this week, so that's a cool mid-table duel. Sorry about that. Yeah, no changes to Liquid ID. All right, next is RRQ Hoshi, taking first place away from Bigetron Alpha in the regular season so far. Based on the 4 weeks that we have, this team looks as solid as ever, man. Last season, they only had one weapon, and it was Skylar. It was legit just Skylar Esports. This season, Skylar is one of many weapons, but I would still say that he is the deadliest weapon of RRQ Hoshi. And everyone can really step up to fill, each other's weaknesses, but I do want to say I have a few nitpicks. Last week, it was Rinz's positioning, right? And I still think sometimes Rinz does tend to, overextend a bit in these team fights, and this could be punished. But we did see that Sutsujin's hero pool might be starting to get read out here. Alter Ego was able to get a very good read on Sutsujin in game number 2 when they actually got a win. And yes, the drafts rarely, like RRQ rarely lose out on the drafts because they have an amazing coach, Kez Cute, shout outs to him. But they can still lose in the draft. Sometimes they also just over-respect their opponents. I think the way that they just flat out lost in the drafts, we can bring it to game 2, game 3 of their match against their Alter Ego, and you can see again in the here. I'll play it again. I already played this clip when we were talking about Alter Ego, but then up against Geek Fam as well. A lot of teams would ban the Roger, right? And RRQ Hoshi, they did ban the Roger. But in game number 2, they banned the Roger and they decided to pick the Julian. And really, that Julian serves no purpose in the team other than let's deny Vincent from getting a Roger Julian. And yes, it could still work. You take the 2 comforts away, but he's really only a crazy threat on the Roger. I think even on the Julian, there are ways to counter that. So we did see that right after in game number 3. Game number 3, they decided, you know what, let's not go for the Julian to deny Vincent here. Let's actually instead just go and ban the Roger, respect that, don't over-respect, and just build our drafts the way we wanted it to look like. And that's what we saw in Game 3 of RRQ versus Geek Fam. So yeah, it's not really, bad negatives for RRQ. It's just really small nitpicks that they can improve in the future. And yeah, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. You want to respect Vincent, we get it, but too much of it can lead to losing games. But yeah, let's take a look at their standing. To no one's surprise, RRQ will be number 1, all right? Like, they are looking like solid contenders this season. They're looking so solid. They're looking so consistent. We're going to have to put RRQ right there at the top. Rebellion. King MATT. Against EVOS, their drafts were pretty impressive, honestly. It was actually pretty impressive. That has been one of the many problems of Rebellion, and the drafts have been very, very questionable at times. Like, they picked there were a lot of weird picks in the first 3 weeks for Rebellion, and it looks like they are getting better, right? The Yve answer to the Juicin against EVOS Glory was a pretty good answer. I actually really like the Yve against Juicin matchup, especially in lane. And it looks like the players are told to play very textbook-like. This could be good, but they could also be very bad. But if you watch Rebellion's playstyle, when they play the textbook style, they just aren't proactive at all. They are just waiting for their power spikes. They legit won't. They'll go for the first turtle fight, and then that's it. And then after that, they'll just be waiting for their power spike. They won't make any moves at all. And then when they get that power spike, then they actually look to go for fights. But even then, it's not really decisive. They're very indecisive when it comes to these fights. And because it's very indecisive, it almost feels like the awkwardness leads them to winning. That's what happened against EVOS. They literally just utilize their own weaknesses. Like, a lot of top teams should be able to exploit this, but how do I put this into perspective? It's like playing a fighting game when you are a skilled fighter, right? You know the combos and stuff, and you're just playing someone who is mashing, who doesn't know what he's doing. Sometimes because the man that you're up against doesn't know what he's doing, you don't know what you're doing either. You don't know what he's doing either, and sometimes that actually beats you out. And honestly, I think that was exactly what happened. Rebellion versus EVOS. Not to that extent, obviously. Rebellion definitely know what they're doing, but at times they're very indecisive, and that indecisiveness actually helped them. It's a very weird style of play. It's very awkward. They're still bottom of the barrel for me. They are still the GOATs. Yes, you heard that right, buddy boys. They are still the GOATs. They are the GOATs. They are still here. This is it. They are the GOATs, okay? There you go. Oof, next we have Bigetron Alpha, and unfortunately, Bigetron Alpha will have to get a downgrade here. And but I honestly feel like, again, I really hope it's true. Based on the interviews, Bigetron's coach, Theo Nile, has said that they are experimenting, and they're just looking to find holes in their own game in the regular season with their first leg matches. That's why even against Fnatic Onic, they actually played Finn instead of Key. But really, it hasn't really been Finn or Key. That hasn't really been the issue. The issue has been the draft at times, right? It looks really weird. Against Geek Fam, they don't want to ban out the Roger for some reason. And it does make sense if they are actually experimenting, but at this point, it feels more like cope, right? I really hope it's not the case. I really hope for Bigetron Alpha, obviously, it's my team, it's this team that I support, that this is truly an experiment. This is truly Bigetron Alpha looking to find more ways to improve their game. Because if it's not, then we are going to see these mistakes in the playoffs later, and it is going to lead to Bigetron's downfall again. It's going to be the same story again and again and again. But yeah, the draft looked weird at times. We mentioned this last week already when they didn't ban Roger against Geek Fam. This week, it's a bit different, though. It's not really a losing draft that they went for. It's not really like a draft that they don't have respect for, but it's more of a gamble. Against the Hylos, against Fnatic Onic Game 3, they were up against the Hylos, and they gambled with just early aggression. To face the Hylos, a lot of teams would usually just go for carry, just some heroes that can actually deal with the Hylos. But instead, Bigetron Alpha decided to go for an early game-centric draft to try to snowball and use that snowball to stop the Hylos, right? Use the early aggression to stop the opposing team. And this is where the biggest hole of Bigetron comes in. There were a lot of unnecessary moves, and there are actually a lot of these unnecessary moves. I really hope you guys can see it on your screen right now. But yeah, Super Ken, in game number 3, they were able to get a kill on the Hylos. Keyboy died, first blood. He got it with like the Tempest of Blades, right? But then he decided to take all the blades, which was very unnecessary. Again, he could have just, walked back or just gone back to his jungle just by flying there. He doesn't need to take all the blades, taking a turret shot, and in the end losing so much energy to a point where Kyrie can punish him. These small mistakes lead up to massive, there are consequences. There are consequences to your actions. And I think for Bigetron Alpha, they need to learn this. If they learn that there are consequences, then later on, they're still really, really good. I'm not even joking. As a Bigetron fan, obviously there's a little bit of bias, but as an analyst, as a caster right now, I'm actually saying that Bigetron do look strong. And the game against Fnatic Onic actually proves it. The game against RRQ proves it. The game, all of their matches proves that Bigetron Alpha are a strong team, but they still make some unnecessary mistakes time and time again. All right. So for BTR, still, these mistakes are very easily fixable, but easily fixable mistakes usually are ignored. So let's hope for them they don't ignore it, because I don't want to call them Bigot Choke again. Here it is. Bigetron Alpha will be downgraded to top tier right below Fnatic Onic right now. We'll see if Fnatic Onic rise up. Honestly, there could be a case like right now I would say Geek Fam and Bigetron are a bit 50-50. Both of them have very similar problems almost, you know? So yeah, this could be interchangeable. But yeah, this could be interchangeable, honestly. So yeah, could be interchangeable. Honestly, based on this week, I think Bigetron was still more impressive, so I'll put them there. Yeah, let's move on to the last team. Up next, it is Fnatic Onic. I wouldn't say they're as good as RRQ just yet, based on their performance against Bigetron, because there's still a lot of, unnecessary moves, so a lot of blunders in the match against Bigetron as well. But let's talk about what makes them strong first, right? Sometimes what makes them strong is what makes them weak. Yeb's style of draft is very improv and on the go. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but for the longest time ever, Yeb, all the coaches in MPL ID usually bring notes or a book or, just stats to the desk or to the player arena, stage. This is a stage. But Yeb actually never brings any book. He just goes there, thinks, and drafts. He just walks up and drafts, So that could be great because obviously his mind works in a very, very creative way, but sometimes it could also leave them to a point where they lose out in the draft sometimes, and yeah, that is one of the greatest strengths. Against Bigetron Alpha, it definitely felt like, they were able to punish Bigetron Alpha's template drafts with their own very creative and very multi-dimensional ways of drafting. Yeb's very multi-dimensional ways of drafting. And sometimes it does look like, wrapping up the drafts could be difficult because of the way that he likes to draft. But anyways, Fnatic Onic are also still not the same as before, I would still say. Yes, Rez is an improvement compared to Litpi. I agree with that, especially if we're talking about filling Boots' enabler role in the lane, in the game. Because Boots, what he was able to offer to Fnatic Onic was the fact that he's just an enabler. He was never really recognized as, he was recognized as the best XP laner, but he wasn't recognized as the best XP laner as like the full carry of the team. He was not that guy in Season 10 all the way to Season 13, or yeah, I mean, technically Season 12 was his last season when he actually played the full season. But you get my point. He's an enabler. Rez is basically the real replacement to Boots. Litpi is more of a carry, so maybe if they need him later in the future, it'll be great too. The team still makes way too many blunders for me to put them at number 1. Way too many unnecessary moves as well. There were so many moments where Sans just walks up on the Feramis and ends up dying too. And we can see that in Game 2 against Bigetron Alpha. We can see that in Game 3 against Bigetron Alpha. We can see that in Game 1 against Bigetron Alpha. Both these teams, Bigetron and Fnatic Onic, still have a lot of mistakes in their game. Fnatic Onic are the better team, though, against Bigetron Alpha. They were able to win out against BTR 2-1. So Fnatic Onic deserve to be higher up than Bigetron Alpha for this week based on that performance, because Bigetron made more blunders. I also have to say that for Fnatic Onic, Kyrie is back on the Assassins. Well, he never really left on the Assassins. He's always meant to be an Assassin player. He's always meant to play these roles. So the fact that now we are in the meta of Kyrie, we're in the Assassin meta. This should be the Kyrie meta. They've been trying Albert a lot, but I think now it's definitive. Kyrie on the Assassins, redonkulous stuff, all right? So maybe Yeb can go back to what he did in Season 13. If you guys remember, it was still the utility meta, but the way that they actually played it was, in the drafts at least, was they banned out every single utility and they forced their opponents to play Assassins. I'm not sure if they can actually do that now, but hey, Assassins are much more viable now. Given these Assassins, play for Kyrie, have an enabler in the XP. That's what they are doing with Rez. So they're playing for Kyrie again. Let's go. So, at the end of the day, let's see it. Fnatic Onic, they will not move. I think they are top tier, but right now, the only one that can really deserve that top spot is RRQ. By the way, don't mind this aura. I can't delete it from this tier list. So don't mind this. This doesn't mean aura is shit. This is just their old logo because I'm using my template from season 13. Sorry for that. But yeah, Onic, they're still going to be here. I don't think anything changes. Like they deserve to be number 1 top tier, and Bigetron will be downgraded. So there you go. All right, so I know usually after the whole tier list, the whole power ranking thing, we usually have a player ranking or a top 3 players per role, but I have decided to do something different now. So we'll have this every single week, but we're only going to add in the player rankings after every 2 weeks, so we can actually see the full change, because sometimes it just becomes very repetitive. It's just the same guys in the top 3 all the time. So yeah, this week we will continue every even numbered week for the player rankings, but now I'm just gonna do match predictions. But we will have match predictions every single week for you guys. If you guys want to join in the Mir Bless / Mir Curse, let me know. Leave your predictions in the comment section down below as well. But okay, here it is. For the 6th of September, this should be a very, very easy Friday for some of these teams. Geek Fam should be able to get it done against Rebellion Esports. Rebellion are still very, very inconsistent. Geek Fam are inconsistent too, but not to the level of Rebellion. And unlike EVOS Glory, Rebellion won't really be able to utilize that full awkwardness against Geek Fam. Yes, they have a mental boost, but again, Geek Fam are just way better on paper. They are way better. This is like I'll give you the percentage for the win as well, all right? Like, based on my percentage, this should be an 80% win to a 20% win of Rebellion. We'll see if that walks up. Fnatic Onic versus EVOS, this should be 100-0. I honestly don't see a way where EVOS can beat them unless they somehow, actually train their minds off and they go back to their prime of season 13. But even then, I don't think they can beat Fnatic Onic right now. But hey, honestly, I think EVOS can still take a game if they have... This is not 100-0, but it should... No, it's 100-0. Fnatic Onic beats EVOS Glory. RRQ versus DEWA. Next, this is another 100-0. RRQ beats DEWA any day of the week, 2-0. Alter Ego versus TLID. Now, this is a toss-up. This is a 60-40. Or, yeah, 60% TLID, 40% Alter Ego. TLID definitely looked like the better version of Alter Ego. And I think TLID have ways to actually deal with Alter Ego. As long as they ban out these flashy assassins from Nile, Alter Ego won't really be able to fully rely on those mechanics from Nile. So TLID definitely have a hold of Alter Ego based on this matchup. So 60% to TLID. I'm going to go to TLID. Maybe a win, 2-1, but possibly 2-0. Bigetron versus EVOS Glory. This is another massive matchup that we have this week. This is probably going to be match of the day for Saturday. And Bigetron versus EVOS. Again, I'm going to say it is most likely 80-20 for Bigetron Alpha against EVOS Glory. This is the hell week of EVOS, all right? Against Fnatic Onic, against Bigetron Alpha, they're going to have to pull off miracles. They did this before last season. Against Fnatic Onic, against Bigetron, they won. So maybe it's the same arc that they're going through. I personally don't think so. Very sad, but yeah, Bigetron look like the better team. They will definitely have fixed their mistakes against Fnatic Onic, and they'll look to maybe 2-0 EVOS, 80-20. Alter Ego Rebellion, this honestly should be Alter Ego. But due to Rebellion's very awkwardness and technically their ways, this is also 70-30. This is 70-30. Alter Ego 2-0 should be, right? This should be the matchup here. Alter Ego have the better drafts as long as they don't over-respect Rebellion. And Rebellion, they're definitely going to be respecting Alter Ego. Now, a lot of teams will basically just ban out the Fanny every time and the Ling. So Nile will struggle to get his heroes. That's why I'm putting it 70-30 because Rebellion still have a chance to win this. But this should be an Alter Ego match win. 2-0, not sure. Maybe 2-1, but it should be 2-0 on paper, honestly. Geek Fam versus Fnatic Onic. This one is tough. This one is more 50-50, honestly. Like, Geek Fam, because Geek Fam will have improved already since the previous week. We know how Beloy works. This is 50-50. I'm going to have to give the edge over to Fnatic Onic still, though. But Geek Fam are also really good. 2-1 Fnatic Onic. But this one could go either way. This is 50-50. Honestly, 50-50. DEWA versus TLID. TLID should be able to win this one. They look better. But again, if DEWA United actually try to utilize the Hijime lineup again, DEWA could actually catch TLID off guard. So this is more of a 60-40, 70-30. It depends on the lineup. If DEWA deploy K's and Watts, I honestly feel like this is 70% TLID 2-1. Or maybe, yeah, 2-0 probably. But if it is Hijime that comes into play for DEWA, this could be DEWA win, honestly. It could be. Yeah. And if TLID win, probably 2-1 if TJ plays. So let's see what happens. And those are my predictions. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you guys agree with my predictions? And leave your predictions down below. And also leave your comments on all the teams that I already talked about down below.